folks. Welcome to Education Matters. Today we have two new guests. Well, actually, one you saw last week. This is Michelle Levell, and she's coming to talk about school choice and etc. And we have a special guest from Croydon, New Hampshire, actually up off of 89, I think, right? This special guest is a PhD, Dr. Jody Underwood, from the Croydon School District, SAU, must be an SAU, right?
SAU 43.
SAU 43, Dr. Jody Underwood, who is the chair of the Croydon School Board. Thank you for coming, Jody.
It is my pleasure.
And we have a lot to talk about in this area of school choice, and I guess you call it something else, maybe, Michelle, but let's just bring that topic to the folks here in this district of Manchester and what the benefits are and go on from there.
Jody, you've been telling us about a pretty unusual program that your school board offers the Croydon residents. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So a couple of years ago, the Croydon residents voted on what we call school choice. And it's starting this fall, so it's very exciting. Everybody's very excited about it. And what happens basically is parents get to choose what school their kids go to, and the money follows, just in simple terms. And we have all sorts of schools on the list that parents can choose from, including public and private, just not religious. That was where the state drew the line, and that's a topic for another show. But so Montessori is on the list, and KUA is on the list, and so on. The state had no problem with those. And how it works is this. So, I mean, I'll tell you the history in a moment, but we had an area agreement with Newport schools, and what that means, and I think every town does this differently, we agreed to send all of our kids to Newport, and they agreed to accept all our kids. And it was a 10-year contract, at the end of which, if we didn't do anything, it would continue in perpetuity. So you have to actually do something to sever it, and that is the history part of this. And so we had to go through the whole process, and it's all spelled out in the laws and what you have to do, which we did. But what we ended up deciding in our proposal to the state and to the town, in fact, was that Newport would be our anchor school. And whatever tuition they set, that money would follow the kid to whatever school the parents chose for them. Of course, hopefully the kids get to choose also to find the school that is most suited to your children and so on. The parents would pay anything above that, and if they had a school that they went to, like Montessori, for example, who charges less than Newport, the town would win. So the taxes hopefully would go down in the long run, right? And then that's the general story. Again, I mean, a lot of short versions here, but what's happening, and we're starting in September, July 1st actually started it, but school doesn't start till September. Some of the surrounding districts have decided to lower their tuition to match Newport. Newport originally, because of some other contractual things, was going to raise some of the fees because we weren't guaranteeing all our kids. We used to get a discount. They decided to give us that discount anyway. Again, they're trying to compete with the other schools, so the costs are coming down, and it's really good.
Very nice.
Yeah.
So, bringing up costs, you were talking about how if the tuition at the family's choice is a little higher, they pay the difference. But yet, if it's lower, the town benefits.
That's right.
So, what other things have you seen so far, or do you project in ways that this new arrangement will benefit your district?
Sure. So as I said, Newport is our anchor school. If a lot of Croydon students choose to go to another school, say Sunapee or Kearsarge or another, probably it's going to be a local school, then we can change our anchor school to be that school. I mean, what if they go to Montessori? Suddenly that's less than $9,000 a year for, well, they only go to 8th grade, but it's just everything's different for different grade levels. But let's just say the middle school then, which is now, and that's a number I have on my computer, which I don't have with me, I'm sorry. It's somewhere around, let's say between $12,000 and $14,000 a year, just to keep that as a ballpark. High school I know is $15,000 at Newport. But let's say most of our kids decide to go to Montessori, then we set that as the anchor. And so then parents would pay the amount above that, and the town wins a lot more. right? I think that would be very interesting if it happened that a private school became the anchor school. I don't know
Wow.
what would happen there, but there's nothing stopping us from doing something like that as far as I can tell.
So this all came about because your contractual arrangement with your other normal ongoing school, anchor school, was coming to an end. So how did this, because this is a pretty different idea, instead of just renewing it or finding another school
That's
in
right.
your immediate area. So how did you come up with this? This is really pretty unique and ingenious.
Right. So Jim Peschke, who was on the school board back in 2007, he started this process. Basically asked the town if they wanted to continue with Newport. Newport had two schools in need. I don't remember the No Child Left Behind term, but 2 out of like 4 schools, that's pretty bad. Do you want your kids going there? And they took a poll of about 70 families in Croydon, I guess were targeted. 2/3 of them responded and said, yeah, we want choice. So that's where it started. And this is a long process. This is like 2007. We're at 2014 now.
Right.
Wow.
7 years to get this thing going. By 2010, we had committees to look in the surrounding areas. No other school wanted to get into an area agreement with us. They were all open to tuition agreements. So 2010, we finally had a vote in the town to say, yes, let's do this, let's sever it. We needed representation from the Newport School District and ours, plus the superintendent as a non-voting member of this committee to make this thing go forward. And it was very amicable, actually, for the most part. We had to present to the state, get permission to, well, it turns out it wasn't permission. It was, they told us it was, but it wasn't. They just had to review it, but we did not have to take their advice. They could give us advice, but we didn't have to follow it. So we're really independent. Every school district is independent, despite what the State Board of Education tells you. This is my
that's good news.
understanding.
That is interesting because
Yeah.
I know many other school boards at least in the southern New Hampshire area, see that relationship with the Board of Education and the Department of Education in a very different way than you're experienced.
Right.
So that's interesting.
It is interesting. And similarly, there's the state sanctioned, I guess, school board that everybody talks about as being, you have to follow what they do, and you don't. That's not even an elected position or I don't know what it is, but we don't have
it's appointed, as we all learned again this last spring with another very recent appointment that was controversial.
And so, I mean, my school board, if I like what that state school board does, then I follow it, but usually we just do what we want to do. We follow the laws,
Right.
But we just try to get it so we're focusing on the children and trying to give them the best education possible, and sending everybody to the same school. Just how does one solution fit all? It just can't. So that comes back to the parents. Who knows better than a parent, especially one involved in their kid's education, what that kid needs in order to learn to fit in society, to live a life, to be a participating resident
Right.
in the state, and so on. So it is about parents helping their kids decide.
Nice.
And for those who don't care, they can choose the anchor school. That's fine, right? They can do the status quo. Nobody's going to judge them on that.
No, that's nice because we always advocate for parental involvement and different options for different kids, different needs and goals.
Exactly.
So this sounds like a really phenomenal program.
It is. And it's interesting, we've had interest from almost every school district we've approached, as far away as Concord and Keene. They have showed up we had an open house for the parents to meet, and parents and kids, I'm sorry that I keep saying just parents, for the parents and kids to meet the different representatives from different schools and see what they each offer, to see which is the best fit for them. And I mean, it was just astonishing to me, so the town people gave us a list of schools that they wanted, and it included schools like Concord and Keene. So we call them and they're like, yeah, sure, we'd like to participate. So awesome, right? And they show
Wow.
up and they drive the hour
So
to come to us.
So students from Croydon are going to be going to Concord High School or Concord
Right, so for us it's grades 5 through 12.
5 through 12?
Yep. because Croydon itself has its own K to 4. It's a multi-age schoolhouse. Just to put a little plug for Croydon in here, it's called a one-room schoolhouse, although it is more than one room now, but still multi-age classes. And it's one of only 2, how do they put this, continually run one-room schoolhouses in New Hampshire. So one of the 2 last remaining ones.
Oh, how
so
cool.
we're very proud of that, and the town really likes the school. It's just a nice community feeling, and nobody wants to see that go away, even for cost, which is interesting. It might be cheaper if we tuitioned our kids out to other schools, but everybody wants the school. That was put up to vote a few years ago, and they're like, no, we want the school.
Nice.
Yeah.
Oh, that sounds so quaint and cute.
It is,
and
right?
Dynamic, and having the multi-ages and people at the... Now, does that allow for kids to be at different levels?
Yes, that's what the multi-age part is, exactly. And we're encouraging the teachers to go across grades. Right now, starting in the fall, it's going to be kindergarten in its own, 1 and 2, and 3 and 4. But we're encouraging the teachers to fully embrace the multi-age thing. And if you have kids in the first grade who are reading at 3rd grade level, let them work with those kids. And, you know, they like that idea. Our teachers
How many teachers do you have to how many students in that one-room schoolhouse or two-room schoolhouse?
Right. And so we're actually expanding to 4th grade starting in the fall. We were only K to 3 until now. So it's a slightly different, but I will talk about what it is in the fall than how it has been. Okay. So we have 1 kindergarten teacher, one teacher for 1-2, and 1 teacher for 3-4. Right. And that's what we have. And about 25 kids total. So, and we only have about 100 kids for school-age kids at all.
Now,
So-
do those students get an opportunity to go to another district's school, or it's not offered to the 1 through 4?
It is not offered
K through 4.
in K through 4, that's
Okay,
right.
so those students stay.
And you could argue with us that we should, and, you know, for full choice, I think that would be good, but the town's voting on it, and they are voting to keep the school, and so we're sticking with that.
Nice. Wow.
So you don't have a middle school building and you don't have a high school building.
That's correct.
So I kind of like the Hooksett situation for high school, is it not?
Well, that's a
Hooksets-
whole nother...
You know, are they going to send their students to Manchester? Are they going to send their students to Derry? What's the name of that school?
Pinkerton.
Pinkerton.
Is it parental choice, or like
Well, and
whole groups of kids?
It's groups.
Groups.
But see, tuitioning out your resident students to other districts has been used in multiple districts across the state. Wyndham, for a long time before we had our own high school, had a tuition agreement with Salem, just across the road there, and it was in place for a long, long time until we built our own high school. But I think there's a lot of districts that have these tuition agreements.
That's right.
So how would you describe how these other districts might be able to consider a program similar to yours?
Right, and there's nothing to stop them from doing that, especially if they already have tuition agreements. The thing I understand about tuition agreements, at least with us, is the districts don't have to accept your kids. And this was one of the problems the state has. It's like, what would you do if some kids don't have a place to go? And, you know, at that point, it's up to the parents to figure out what's going on. You know, nobody's going to get excluded because of special ed, because they can't, right? So it's not going to be that. What else could it be? That they're not performing well education-wise? Well, then let's talk with the schools and with the parents on that, but I don't think anybody would get turned away for that. They're worried about the troublesome kid. And then it really is a parental problem. I don't know why schools should have to deal with that if parents aren't, right? They're just, but that could be a touchy issue.
No, and I can appreciate why schools would be asking those sorts of questions, because I know in our own district where we're proposing a district-approved charter school, that's a topic that's come up. So how do you guys handle the special ed students? Do they have the same kind of choice as any other student, or are they just told, here's where you have to go?
Any other special ed student.
Okay.
It's the same. They get an IEP, and the administration basically decides based on the rules that they follow.
So does this money to service those kids end up following them to their school, or is that something that they end up having to get the services back through Croydon? How does that work?
Right. I mean, how it worked up until now was if Newport offered the services, that's where they went. If they needed an out-of-district placement, they would get an out-of-district placement. So wherever these kids go, if they offer the services, then they'll go there. Maybe we decide that Newport offers it, and that's where the kid will need to go just to get those services needed. Otherwise, if it's out of district, I mean, basically, Croydon's going to pay for any extra special ed costs. Yep, unfortunately.
So how does, like, some of the other costs, like busing? So if you've got students going all the way to Keene or Concord, how does that work?
Right. So according to the law, every school district is required to provide transportation to the student to the assigned school. Since these are choice schools and not assigned schools, the parents take on the responsibility. Okay?
Oh.
So the only reason you would want your kid to go to Concord or Keene is because you work down there. So you're going to take your kid there. I mean, that's the only way this could possibly work. Now, if we get a number of kids choosing to go to a particular school, maybe we work something out. We, hire a van or set up carpooling or, something. And the school board can help organize that kind of thing. Interestingly, the town of Plainfield, New Hampshire, said if at least 5 kids register with Plainfield, they'll send a bus.
Oh, wow. So you have these other districts offering to
buying for. Yes.
Wow. Well, that's fabulous. It's like another way of them competing
That's right.
for your students.
That's exactly right. Yep.
Wow. Very nice.
Yeah, I'm going to get back to another question you
Yeah.
asked because I felt like there was an answer in here a number of different times. But you asked if we were the only school district to do this. Now, you talked about the tuitioning options, but Cornish, New Hampshire has had school choice for high school for over 25 years already, and we hadn't even heard about it. I mean, this was something that our town sort of made up. We said, let's see if we can do this. And then in talking to the neighboring school districts, Cornish was one of them. And in fact, they contacted us because they read about it in the paper. They weren't originally on our list. We got a number of those calls saying they want to be there because I think we're on the radar and people want to be on there, right? They also want our kids. And it turns out they do it, and part of their agreement is that they can send their kids to schools in Vermont if they're more appropriate for their kids.
Wow.
Which, I found fascinating. It's like, how come we hadn't heard about this before? It happened so long ago that nobody's even paying attention anymore. It's very interesting.
Wow. So it's so established. It's part of their normal.
Exactly.
So for as phenomenal as your program is, it's not the brand new, untested program that others might assume.
Exactly. Now, we're the first ones going back as far as 5th grade and through middle school. But yeah, I mean, we're just expanding on what they did in some sense.
How very exciting.
Isn't it?
Wow. So this all starts this fall.
It does.
So have you already seen where your students will be going? Does that get announced like in August when parents have to decide?
We were trying to get parents to decide early on, and they're just not doing it. So I honestly don't know the numbers at this point.
Sure.
I hope to learn them soon.
Soon.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. So without knowing where the kids are going just yet, so, okay, forgive me if I'm not catching on with all of this. So do you pay those schools directly, the Croydon School District or the board, so you'll end up paying each individual school whatever's appropriate per student, or do you pay it to the parent and it's presumed they then do that? How does...
The SAU is handling all of the administrative parts of it. So the schools and school districts are going to bill the SAU. The SAU in turn will bill the parents if necessary.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, that's how that's going to work. Nice and
Okay.
simple. But it's a different agreement with each school. Some of them want it monthly, some quarterly, and the SAU will handle that.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Now, did this put any additional administrative strain on your SAU? Because instead of having a really clear, simple, established agreement that was pretty, I'm sure it was a well-oiled, well-familiar kind of process. So has this put any more administrative difficulties or costs even to your SAU?
Obviously, there's more work for them because they're going to have to pay the bills and send out bills. But I mean, that hopefully will be the extent of it. You'll have vocal parents, but there always are vocal parents.
Always.
So I don't know if that will change really. But nobody seems to be concerned about it.
Oh, wow.
In the SAU, they're very supportive. They love that we're doing this. Our
Wonderful.
administration,
I wonder if there's any way that you could figure out, since you're so intuitive here with your, I don't want to say experiment, but what you're doing, if you can figure out a way so that the money can be given to the parents so that they can choose where to go, so that religious schools could be incorporated in the deals,
And homeschool,
and homeschools
right?
as well. But
Yeah.
because if the district can be so innovative and just say, okay, folks, we're just going to give you, the $12,000, or this is the adequacy money from the state, correct?
Yes. Yeah, that's right.
This is your child's money, technically.
I love that idea.
And say, for those parents who don't want the school to administer the money to the choice school, we'll just cut you a check. What would prevent that from happening?
What would it prevent it from
Nothing.
happening? I know.
Just cut them a check and say, here you go. You're not our
It sounds so
responsibility.
easy. I love it.
You're not our responsibility, and but you do have an obligation to for attendance. The child must attend school, so we know you'll do the right thing and go to the right place for your child. Cut them a check.
I'm going to look into that.
Good idea, Deborah.
I'd take a check for my student if I want to go to a parochial school or wherever. It's the adequacy money is the student's money, really. It's not the district's money.
It's not.
It goes to the student,
Follows
the number
the
of
kid.
student.
That's right.
So you could actually cut a check, I believe, to the parent and say,
Go educate your kid.
go educate your kid. If you don't want to come here, it's your student's money. Taxpayers have paid for this in the state. And
Well, I can tell you, I've heard challenges to that because there are fixed costs for the building, for maybe the lunch program, for funding the SAU functions and staff. So there's some portion
maybe you give
that
them
would have to-
11,000 and keep 1,000 for yourselves.
I hear you. I do. And I think if that started happening, the costs would start coming down because then people start
Yes.
there's just such an interesting, I think a further analysis would have to happen to see what happens, to see what, I don't know, the amount of that check. It's like homeschool parents, you don't spend that much on the actual education of your kids, but maybe you should get reimbursement for lunch if the kids in school are getting lunch, right? For all the materials, for the time, for going to museums, for doing whatever you do, right? Maybe you can, and maybe it's through, nobody trusts anybody, right?
No.
That's part of the problem.
Well, maybe the school that the child wants, or the parent wants to send the child to, maybe it's only $6,000. So they ask you for $6,000.
Exactly. So it would have to be like a reimbursement kind of thing.
Well, you cut the check for $6,000 for Joey, and and then the parent's happy because it's covered the tuition, and maybe they want another $1,000 for transportation for gas. Okay, so you give them $7,000,
Right.
but you've gotten $12,000 from the state.
Yeah, that's right. And so maybe taxes eventually go down when that starts happening. So let's address that from the religious school standpoint. One of the things that the State Board of Education said when we had a religious school on our list just to see what would happen, right? And they said, no, separation of church and state. And it's like, well, have you actually looked at that line in the state constitution? And I wish I had the quote in front of me, but it's basically, do you know this?
I don't have the quote.
It's, we will...
No taxpayers support religious.
No, it doesn't say that. It doesn't say that at all.
No
It says...
No support?
Not embrace. I'm sorry.
Oh, they will
Is
embrace.
it cherish?
Cherish. That's the word.
Cherish.
That whoever we is, will cherish the seminary and education. Seminary comes first. How do you separate that out from education?
That's one of the words they didn't take out in the 60s. Well, what year was it? They didn't take it out. They should. I don't go there.
Cherish or
Doris would know.
seminary?
Doris would know.
Doris Hornsey would know
She's
all
the
about
the
that.
historian of education law.
Wait, but which word are you saying they should have taken out?
Well, the
she's saying.
sectarian words, they took most of them out.
No, but this is the point. If they're talking about cherishing the seminary and public education...
Because it was cherished,
Why are they
not
separate?
support. But the Supreme Court said we will support, and that put $signs. Whereas before, cherishing education in those institutions of higher learning or whatever, it wasn't a burden on the state. But the Supreme Court then decided it was going to be the state's burden.
And so then, if we're paying for the education, why are we not paying for the so-called seminary or or parochial education if that's what the parents choose to do. I mean, the separation of church and state basically says that the state shouldn't tell you to be a certain religion. This isn't that.
No,
and
the
I don't
parents
know why
are choosing.
It goes there. Yeah.
Right, parents are choosing.
Exactly.
That is so interesting, and that's a can of worms.
That's a can of worms.
So well, obviously you're going to have to give your program some time to actually run, see how it goes, see how the costs and how people are satisfied with it. But let's assume it all goes well and people are happy with their choices. Would families be able to say, this isn't working out how I like, can we go back to Newport? Can we do they still have that flexibility if they need to?
Of course they do. Okay. And one of the promises we wanted to get from other schools was, if you accept Joey for 5th grade, is he automatically accepted in 6th, barring some crazy circumstances? And they're like, of course, this is about the kid. You don't want to move them around a lot. So we got that from all the school districts. But at the same time, if it's not a good fit, why should they stay? And the schools all recognize that. Mm-hmm. So yeah, you can of course switch around. I think, by the way, what's going to happen this first year is there's going to be very few people choosing different schools. They're very comfortable with Newport because it's always been there.
Right.
And they've been there for generations, and of course I want my kids to go there, and not everybody, but many. And they want to see somebody else try it first. And so, we'll probably just get a handful of people, hopefully more, I don't know, but trying it the first year, and then the buzz will spread around town.
Right.
Oh yeah.
That
let somebody else try it. Go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. It's a little scary.
Yeah,
I can see that.
And I could definitely see why kids would be hesitant if they're in the middle of their junior high years. They wouldn't want to leave their friends and all of that, and that's a tumultuous time anyhow for a kid. But
that's exactly right.
I could definitely see how somebody finishing 8th grade to enter high school, it's a transitional time anyhow.
That's right.
So, wow.
That's right.
Be very exciting.
So I would expect to see that too during those transition years. That's when you're going to get more people changing.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Well, we have 1 minute left, so we should wrap up with your website or contact info where both of you...
Where could people go, or school boards across the state, where could we direct people to get more information?
Sure. I mean, they could write to me directly, junderwood@sau43.org.
Okay.
That's easy. Or any of our school board members, and you can look on sau43.org for any of our contact information. They'll send you to me.
Great.
Great. Thank you so much for coming.
And Michelle, your website for your school?
Schoolchoice4nh.org.
Okay, great. All right, folks, we thank you for being with us again this week. And this was an interesting topic, and maybe we'll even have money from districts to go to parochial schools eventually. Let's go ask your district. All right, take care, folks. See you next week.